Who do you think you are staring at that contract? Your kind can barely read, let alone understand what $250 million means. Sterling Davis said it in Arabic, standing 3 feet from 12-year-old Imani Lewis, the housekeeper's daughter. He assumed she didn't understand. Before Imani could move, Sterling snatched the crystal vase from her hands and smashed it on the floor. Glass exploded everywhere. Imani stood frozen, surrounded by shattered crystal. Her wrist throbbed where he'd grabbed it. Harrison Taylor, the billionaire, looked up from his desk. A $250 million contract waited for his signature. He saw the mess, the 12-year-old standing in it. He laughed, responded in the same Arabic. Don't blame the child. Animals can't help breaking things. Imani's head stayed down. Her hands trembled. She understood every single word. What happens in the next 4 minutes will leave them speechless. But first you need to see who this little girl really is. 6 hours earlier, Grace Lewis's alarm went off at 4:45 a.m., same as every morning for 12 years. She was 44. Her hands ached before she even got out of bed, the deep kind that comes from scrubbing, polishing, lifting, 12 years of making other people's lives spotless while her body broke down. She couldn't afford a doctor, couldn't afford a day off. The bus to Manhattan took 85 minutes, 2 transfers. Grace closed her eyes and prayed her arthritis wouldn't flare today, not when Mr. Taylor had important guests coming. She arrived at the penthouse at 6:30 a.m. sharp. Harrison Taylor's apartment took up the entire 42nd floor, marble everywhere. A single vase in the entryway cost more than Grace made in 6 months. She started in the kitchen, hand-polished copper pots that never got used, wiped the $8,000 espresso machine, scrubbed already spotless countertops until they gleamed. At 7:15, Harrison walked through on his phone. Talking about oil rights, $250 million. He passed Grace like she was furniture. Didn't say good morning. Never once asked her name in 12 years. At 8:45, Harrison stopped at the guest bathroom she'd just spent 45 minutes cleaning. I smell something, he said, not to her, just out loud. Grace's stomach dropped. Do it again. He walked away. Grace stood there, cleaning supplies in her raw hands. She'd done it perfectly. But she got back on her knees and started over, because she needed this job. Because her 12-year-old daughter needed to eat, needed school supplies, needed something better than this. So Grace scrubbed a spotless bathroom for the second time while Harrison made phone calls about his $250 million deal. Invisible. That's what she was. Imani arrived at 3 p.m. in her public school uniform, the kind with metal detectors and textbooks held together with tape. 2 buses. 85 minutes. She did AP English homework on the ride. 12 years old, reading at college level. Nobody cared. Her scholarship application to the private academy had been rejected last month. Family income $18,000 above poverty line, $60,000 below demonstrated need. She found her mother in the master bedroom, changing yesterday's sheets. Hey, baby, Grace whispered, like her voice might disturb something. Imani hugged her, felt how thin she'd gotten, how her hands trembled. You okay, Mama? Important people coming later? We need to stay extra quiet, extra invisible. Imani nodded. She'd practiced invisible her whole life. She pulled out her backpack. Past crumpled homework and a broken calculator was her treasure. A leather-bound Arabic-English dictionary, gold-leafed edges worn to copper, cracked spine, pages soft as cloth. Her great-grandfather's dictionary. Sergeant Isaiah Lewis, Monuments Man, World War II hero who saved priceless artifacts across Europe. He died before Imani was born, but he left this. Every margin filled with his handwriting, notes in English and Arabic, how to spot forgeries, how to read truth in old documents. Imani had studied this since she was 8. She'd taught herself Arabic, not from expensive classes, from free YouTube videos, MIT OpenCourseWare, library books, this dictionary with her great-grandfather's notes guiding her like a ghost. At 12, she could read classical Arabic poetry, write formal correspondence, identify regional dialects. 3rd place in the regional competition last year, beat high schoolers, beat private school kids with tutors and study abroad. The judges were shocked. Nobody expected genius from a black girl in a public school uniform. She opened the dictionary. Her great-grandfather's faded blue ink stared back. Truth has a quiet voice, Imani. but it's the loudest sound in a room full of lies. He'd written it like he knew she'd read this someday. She traced the words. Then she heard men's voices in the living room. Grace's eyes went wide. "They're early. We need to stay out of the way." Imani tucked the dictionary under her arm and followed. Invisible. The men arrived like a storm. Sterling Davis first. Silver hair, expensive suit that cost more than Grace's yearly rent. Smile practiced in a mirror. Two other men followed. Same expensive clothes. Same shark smiles. Harrison greeted them warmly. Offered drinks. Grace appeared like a shadow with crystal glasses on a tray. $200 each. Sterling didn't glance at her when he took one, but he spoke loud enough for everyone. "I'm surprised you let staff bring children to work, Harrison. Isn't that unprofessional?" He stared right at Imani in the corner, clutching her dictionary. Harrison followed his gaze. His face tightened. "Grace, I thought we discussed this." Grace went pale. "Sir, her after-school program was canceled. I don't need the explanation. Just keep her quiet and out of sight. We have serious business." Sterling's associate laughed. "Bringing a kid to a place like this. Some people don't understand professional boundaries." The other man smirked. Probably couldn't afford a babysitter. The words hit like slaps. Imani felt her mother's humiliation, saw Grace's shoulders hunch, watched her make herself smaller. Grace pulled Imani toward the kitchen, hand shaking. "It's okay, Mama," Imani whispered. But it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. And when the men started speaking Arabic an hour later, when they said things they thought nobody understood, Imani made a decision. Invisible was over. The meeting started at 4 p.m. Harrison sat at his mahogany table, Sterling Davis across from him, two other men flanking Sterling. Catherine Taylor poured coffee, the only person who ever thanked Grace. "I'll leave you to your business," she said. Harrison barely looked at her. The moment she left, Sterling spoke. "Shall we discuss in Arabic? My associates prefer it for sensitive matters." Harrison nodded. They switched languages seamlessly. Imani was across the room dusting the bookshelf, white earbuds in, looking like every 12-year-old ignoring adults. Her music wasn't playing. She was listening to everything. Sterling gestured at her, speaking rapid Arabic. "Does the cleaning woman's child understand anything beyond basic English?" Harrison glanced at Imani, laughed. "Her? She probably thinks Arabic is a type of bread. Don't worry." The men chuckled. Sterling continued in Arabic, dripping contempt. "Why do you allow these people in your home? The mother is barely competent. Bringing a child to business, disrespectful." One associate joined in. "In my country, we wouldn't let someone like that touch valuables. Good for manual labor only." Harrison leaned back, comfortable. "My wife has compassion," he said in Arabic, making it sound weak. "She thinks I should be kind to staff, as if kindness means anything to people at their level." Sterling smiled coldly. "They don't appreciate kindness. They only understand their place." He looked at Imani, still in Arabic. "Look at her. Probably can't spell billion. Those cheap shoes, that ridiculous book she carries like treasure, as if reading will elevate her beyond what she is." He used a slur, crude and dehumanizing. All three men laughed. Imani's hand froze on the bookshelf, half a second, then continued dusting. Harrison spoke in Arabic. "I pay her mother $18 an hour. Generous, considering no education. The child will clean houses, too. It's genetic. Some people are designed to serve." Sterling nodded. "Natural order. My grandfather's help in Beirut knew their station. No delusions." The second associate leaned forward in Arabic. "Does she even attend school? Or is the mother training her to scrub toilets?" More laughter. Harrison's was loudest. "Public school," he said in Arabic. "The kind with metal detectors. She'll be pregnant by 16. They always are." Imani's grip went white on the duster, jaw clenched, but she didn't turn, just kept dusting the same spot. Sterling pulled out a cylindrical case from his briefcase. "Enough about the help," he said in Arabic. "Let me show you what will make us wealthy." He switched to English. "Harrison, prepare to see history." Imani turned slightly. A document. Ancient-looking parchment. Arabic calligraphy. Something was wrong. Imani's hands shook, not from fear, from rage so hot it felt cold. She'd understood every word, every insult, every slur, every prediction treating her like livestock. Pregnant by 16, designed to serve, no delusions about rising. The words circled like vultures. She wanted to scream. to turn and respond in the same flawless Arabic they'd used to mock her, but she didn't. Her great-grandfather's words were louder. Truth has a quiet voice, Imani, but it's the loudest sound in a room full of lies. Wait for the right moment. She steadied her breathing, forced her hands still, then focused on Sterling's document. He was unrolling it carefully on the table. Yellowed parchment, elaborate Arabic calligraphy in dark ink, red wax seal at the bottom with an ornate crest. Sterling spoke in English now, voice smooth. This is the original land deed granted by your ancestors in 1680. Undisputed ownership of the Al-Noor oasis and all mineral rights beneath. Harrison leaned forward, mesmerized. The oil reserves alone, Sterling continued, are conservatively worth $250 million. The other men nodded eagerly. Imani's eyes narrowed. She'd studied her great-grandfather's notes on historical documents since age 8. She knew authentic 17th-century Arabic calligraphy, how real seals aged, the difference between hand-scraped vellum and tea-stained modern paper. From across the room, she saw the mistakes. The paper was too uniform, no thin spots from scraping, the ink too black, sitting on the surface instead of eating into it like centuries-old iron gall ink should. And the seal was wrong. Her great-grandfather had written pages about seals. Forgers always missed one detail. Always. This seal had an eagle in the crest. It should be a falcon. Tiny detail. Devastating. These men were stealing $250 million with a forgery. And Imani Lewis, the 12-year-old who couldn't spell billion, was the only person who knew. She stood there invisible, holding her duster, making a choice. The meeting continued for another hour. Imani stayed invisible in the corner while Sterling's voice painted dreams of oil wealth, ancient family rights reclaimed, Harrison's legacy restored. Harrison leaned forward across the table, completely absorbed in every word Sterling spoke. At 5:15 p.m., the men took a break. Sterling and his associates stepped onto the balcony for expensive cigars. Harrison excused himself to his private study to take a phone call. Grace appeared silently, carrying trash bins. "Come help me, baby," she whispered. They moved through the apartment together, emptying waste bins from each room. When they reached Harrison's private study, Grace hesitated nervously at the doorway. "Quickly now," she said, "before he comes back." Imani lifted the heavy leather wastebasket near Harrison's desk. Shredded paper, long thin strips, Arabic text clearly visible on the fragments. Her heart started pounding. She glanced at the door. Still clear. Then she knelt down and started pulling out the shredded pieces, laying them on the expensive carpet like puzzle fragments. "Imani, what are you doing?" Grace's voice rose in panic. "We don't have time." "Just 1 second, Mama, please." The fragments were small, but Imani's eyes were sharp. Her great-grandfather had taught her how to reconstruct torn documents. Dubai Commercial Bank appeared on one strip, routing numbers that didn't match Sterling's business cards. Abu Dhabi Ministry of Energy letterhead with completely wrong address. She'd memorized the real one last year for a school project. Wire transfer authorization forms, dated 3 months ago, for different dollar amounts than today's discussion. This wasn't Sterling's first time. "Imani?" Grace hissed urgently. Footsteps in the hallway. Imani frantically shoved the fragments back into the trash. They hurried out just as Harrison's shadow appeared, but Imani had seen enough. At 6:30 p.m., Grace said they could finally go home. The men were having dinner. They took the service elevator down. In the lobby, Grace's phone buzzed. "Catherine Taylor. Sterling's associates left a briefcase in the kitchen. Can you bring it back up? They're returning at 8 p.m. to retrieve it." Grace sighed heavily, looked at Imani. "We have to go back up, baby." At 7:45 p.m., Grace and Imani returned to the penthouse. The apartment was quiet. Harrison and Catherine were in the dining room. Grace led Imani to the kitchen where the forgotten briefcase sat on the marble counter. "Wait here," Grace said. "I'll tell Mrs. Taylor we brought it up." She disappeared down the hallway. Imani stood alone. Then she heard voices. Men speaking Arabic. She froze completely. They weren't supposed to be back until 8 o'clock. But there they were in Harrison's study just off the kitchen. The door was cracked slightly open. Sterling's voice came through, low and confident. "Harrison's still at dinner with his wife. We have about 20 minutes. Imani's breath caught. She looked around frantically. No way out without passing directly by the study door. She spotted the supply closet. 3 silent steps. She slipped inside, pulling the door almost closed, leaving just a crack to see and hear through. Sterling and his 2 associates entered the study. They spoke rapid Arabic now, all English pretense abandoned. "Tomorrow at exactly 5 p.m., Sterling said in Arabic. "The wire transfer goes through, $250 million transferred directly to our Dubai account." The Lebanese associate laughed, full of contempt. "I still can't believe he fell for it so easily. The deed looks authentic to amateurs, but anyone with real expertise would immediately spot it as forgery." "Americans are so arrogant," Sterling replied smoothly in Arabic, "especially wealthy ones. They think money buys intelligence. Harrison never questioned whether Al Noor Oasis even exists where we claimed." Imani's eyes went wide. The second associate spoke. "The brilliance is the land does exist, just 400 miles from where we showed him. Worthless desert, no oil, no water, nothing. By the time he sends people to verify, we're gone." "And the fake ministry permits?" the Lebanese man asked. "Masterfully done," Sterling said with pride. "Cost $50,000 to have them created in Cairo. The calligrapher was expensive but exceptionally talented. The seals look perfect." "Not completely perfect," the second man corrected. "Wrong crest, eagle instead of falcon. But Taylor won't notice." They all laughed. Sterling continued in Arabic. "This is our 6th deal like this. London, Paris, Monaco. Wealthy idiots who think speaking some Arabic makes them experts. We've made over $800 million in 3 years. And tomorrow," the Lebanese associate said, raising his glass, "we cross $1 billion. They clinked glasses. Imani pressed against the closet wall, hand over her mouth. Then Sterling said something chilling. "What about the cleaning woman? The one with the child?" Pause. "What about her? She was here all afternoon. What if she overheard something?" Tense silence. Then Sterling laughed dismissively. "She's illiterate help, probably doesn't speak English well. Definitely not Arabic. Stop worrying." The others agreed quickly. They finished drinks and left. Imani waited in darkness, shaking with fury. Grace found Imani 10 minutes later in the closet. "What are you doing in here?" "Mama, we need to talk." On the bus ride home, the long 85-minute journey, Imani told her mother everything she'd overheard, every word, every detail. Grace's face went pale. "No, absolutely not. We're not getting involved. Mama, they're stealing $250 million from a man who called you an animal today." Grace's voice cracked. "Who makes me scrub clean bathrooms twice? You want to save him?" "It's not about him. It's about what's right." "What's right?" Tears filled Grace's eyes. "Right is staying employed. Making trouble means losing everything. This job pays rent, food, school supplies. We're barely surviving. If Harrison fires us, and he will, we're homeless in 3 months." She gripped Imani's hands. "Is that what you want?" Imani looked at her mother's exhausted face, chapped hands, thin shoulders. Everything Grace said was true, but she thought about Sergeant Isaiah Lewis saving priceless art while bombs fell. He could have stayed safe. He chose truth instead. When they got home, Imani couldn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table with the library laptop, researching Sterling Davis until 2 in the morning. London Times, Le Monde, The National, investment fraud, fake land deals, always targeting wealthy men, always disappearing, always Arabic. 3 confirmed victims. $495 million in total losses. Tomorrow at 5 p.m., Harrison Taylor would become victim number 4. Imani stared at the screen, then made her decision. Tomorrow, Invisible would be over. The next morning, Imani woke at 5 a.m. with her mother. She had barely slept 3 hours. Sterling's Arabic confession kept replaying in her mind like a nightmare she couldn't escape. $1 billion, 6 victims across 3 continents, tomorrow at 5 p.m. exactly. Today was tomorrow. Grace looked at her across their tiny kitchen table. "You're still thinking about it, aren't you?" "Mama, I know." Grace's voice carried resignation mixed with something that might have been pride. "You're just like your great-grandfather, baby, so stubborn about the truth." She squeezed Imani's small hand tight. "Promise me you'll be careful. We can't afford to lose this job." They took the early bus together, the long 85-minute ride through dark city streets. Arrived at the penthouse at 6:30 a.m. sharp. The apartment was quiet. Harrison still asleep. Catherine had already left for her morning yoga class. Grace headed to the kitchen to start breakfast. Imani stood in the hallway for a long moment, her great-grandfather's worn dictionary under her arm. Then she made her decision. She slipped into Harrison's study. The documents were spread across his desk, exactly where Sterling had left them. The yellowed parchment deed lay centered, looking ancient and official. Imani pulled out her phone, hands shaking. She photographed every page, the deed with elaborate Arabic calligraphy, the purchase contract, the wire transfer form Harrison would sign today at 5 p.m. Click, click, click. She opened her great-grandfather's dictionary to the calligraphy authentication section. His handwritten notes filled the margins in faded blue ink. She compared the seal on the deed to his sketches. There it was. The family crest showed an eagle with spread wings. The authentic Al Jamil seal, verified on the UAE National Archives website last night, featured a falcon in flight. Tiny difference. Most people would never notice. Devastating proof of forgery. She photographed the seal close, then pulled up the UAE ministry website and photographed the legitimate seal. Side-by-side differences became obvious. Wrong bird, wrong calligraphic style. Even the wax color was off, too bright red instead of aged burgundy. Footsteps in the hallway. Heart jumped. She shoved her phone in her pocket and grabbed her feather duster. Harrison walked past on his phone, talking about stock portfolios. Didn't glance inside. She waited until his footsteps faded, then pulled out her phone again, opened the translation app, started typing the Arabic text from the deed, using her great-grandfather's dictionary to verify every word. The translation revealed more problems. The date referenced a sultan who hadn't taken power until 15 years after the deed was supposedly signed. Geographic descriptions used modern city names that didn't exist in 1680. Legal terminology was completely wrong for that period. Beautiful, sophisticated, expensive forgery, still absolutely fake. Imani compiled everything on her phone. High-resolution photographs, side-by-side comparisons with legitimate sources, translations highlighting anachronisms, direct links to official UAE government websites. She glanced at the clock on Harrison's desk. 10:47 a.m. Wire transfer scheduled for 5 p.m. 6 hours and 13 minutes remained. At 2:30 p.m., Sterling Davis arrived with his two associates, all wearing expensive suits and confident smiles. Imani was dusting the living room bookshelf. Same spot as yesterday, invisible and ignored. The men greeted Harrison warmly, talked enthusiastically about how today would change everything forever. This partnership would make them wealthy beyond imagination. Catherine served imported coffee in delicate china cups. She caught Imani's eye across the room and gave her a small, kind smile. Imani didn't smile back. Her stomach was twisted into knots. At 4 p.m. exactly, they moved into Harrison's study for the final signing. Grace was in the kitchen preparing champagne and caviar for the celebration. Imani stood frozen in the hallway. Her phone felt impossibly heavy. All that evidence, all that proof. She was just a 12-year-old who cleaned houses. Who would believe her? The study door stood partially open. She could see Harrison at his desk, Sterling beside him with that practiced smile. The contract laid out perfectly. Her great-grandfather's words whispered, "Truth has a quiet voice, Imani, but it's the loudest sound in a room full of lies." The hallway clock read 4:52 p.m., 8 minutes until disaster. Imani took one deep breath, then walked toward the study, feather duster in one hand, dictionary in the other. 4:56 p.m. exactly. Imani stood just inside the study doorway, partially hidden in shadow. Nobody had noticed her enter yet. Harrison sat at his enormous desk, his gold-plated fountain pen positioned in his hand. The $250 million wire transfer authorization form lay directly before him. All it needed was his signature. Sterling leaned over Harrison's shoulder, one manicured finger pointing at the signature line. "Right here, my dear friend. Sign here and we both become part of history." The Lebanese associate stood against the bookshelf, barely containing his excitement. Catherine had joined them, standing by the window, wanting to witness this supposedly important moment in her husband's career. Imani's eyes moved around the room, looking for an opening. She saw it. The crystal vase on the shelf to her left, same style as the one Sterling had smashed yesterday, worth thousands. Her hand moved toward it slowly, to dust it, Her fingers touched cool crystal. Harrison's pen touched paper. And Imani Lewis, 12 years old, made the most important choice of her life. Her hand didn't just touch the vase, she pushed it deliberately. The vase tipped on the shelf, wobbled for one terrible second, then crashed violently to the marble floor. The explosion of shattering glass was deafening in the quiet study. Everyone froze instantly. Every head snapped toward the sound. Imani stood surrounded by shattered crystal, her hands still extended. For one long moment, nobody moved, nobody breathed. Then Sterling Davis's face twisted with absolute rage. He started shouting, not in English, in furious Arabic. "You stupid little—" The words poured out unchecked. "Your kind shouldn't even be allowed in civilized places like this. Look what you've done, you ignorant, worthless—" He used the same dehumanizing slur from yesterday, the one that made all the men laugh. He was so consumed with anger he completely forgot to pretend he was someone else. Harrison stared at the broken glass scattered everywhere, at Imani standing in the destruction. His face darkened with fury. "Grace!" he shouted toward the kitchen. "Get in here right now and control your daughter!" Sterling kept going in rapid Arabic, voice rising higher. "This is exactly what I was talking about yesterday, Harrison. These people have absolutely no respect for anything, no intelligence whatsoever. Just look at her standing there like the dumb animal she is." Catherine started to speak. "Sterling, I think that's quite enough." But Imani's voice cut clearly through all the chaos. Crystal clear, perfectly calm, absolutely flawless, in formal classical Arabic. "Mr. Taylor," she said, her young voice as steady as ancient stone, "these men standing in your study are not your business partners. They are professional thieves. And that document on your desk is an expertly crafted forgery." The entire room went completely silent. Sterling's mouth literally fell open mid-sentence, his next word dying unspoken. Harrison's gold pen froze exactly 1 inch above the signature line. The Lebanese associate's face drained of all color instantly. Catherine's eyes went wide with shock and dawning comprehension. Imani stood calmly in the middle of broken crystal, still holding her great-grandfather's worn leather dictionary in both hands, looking directly into Harrison Taylor's stunned eyes. She switched smoothly to perfect English. "And I can prove every single word I just said." Nobody moved a muscle. Nobody drew a breath. The 12-year-old animal who supposedly couldn't even spell the word billion had just spoken absolutely perfect Arabic, and she was about to systematically destroy a $250 million international fraud scheme. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then Harrison's face transformed from shock to rage. "What did you just say?" Sterling recovered first. Forced laugh. "A trick. She learned a few phrases. Don't be absurd, Harrison. She's a child. What could she possibly know?" He waved dismissively at Imani. "This is ridiculous." But Harrison was staring at Imani. Confusion, suspicion, and something else. Fear. Grace appeared breathless, saw the glass, saw Imani, went pale. "Mr. Taylor, I'm so sorry." "Your daughter," Harrison said, eyes still on Imani, "just interrupted my meeting, in Arabic, claiming my contract is fraudulent." Grace's mouth opened. No sound. Sterling stepped between them. "This is clearly some kind of scam she's running. Maybe she's working with someone." "I'm not working with anyone," Imani said, still holding her dictionary, still in the glass. "Your deed is fake. The seal is wrong. The ink is wrong. Everything is wrong." Harrison's jaw clenched. "You're telling me my legal team, 3 Yale lawyers, missed what a 12-year-old cleaning girl spotted?" The way he said cleaning girl stung. Imani didn't flinch. "Yes, because they don't read Arabic, and they didn't check the details." Sterling's face reddened. "This is outrageous. Are you seriously going to let a servant's brat destroy the deal of a lifetime based on childish fantasy?" He turned to Imani, contemptuous. "What are you even doing here? You're supposed to be cleaning, not eavesdropping on conversations you couldn't possibly understand." "But I did understand," Imani said, calm, steady. "I understood yesterday when you called me an animal, said I'd be pregnant by 16, said people like me only know enough English to say, 'Yes, sir.'" The room went silent. Catherine's hand covered her mouth. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Harrison stared at Sterling. "You said what?" Sterling's smile faltered. We were speaking Arabic." "She couldn't have—" "But I did," Imani said. "I understood every word, just like last night when you talked about your other victims, London, Paris, Monaco. $800 million in 3 years. Sterling went white. The Lebanese associate stepped toward the door. Harrison held up one hand. Nobody moves. Ice in his voice. He looked at Imani. You overheard a private conversation, in Arabic, and understood it. Yes. Impossible, Sterling said quickly. She's making it up. She learned a few phrases online. The seal has an eagle, Imani interrupted, sharp. The real Al-Jamil seal has a falcon. The ink is modern carbon-based, not iron gall. No oxidation. And the date references Sultan Ahmad II, but he didn't take power until 1691. Your deed is dated 1680. She looked at Harrison. That's an 11-year mistake. Your lawyers missed it because they don't read classical Arabic, but I do. Silence. Imani could hear her heartbeat. Harrison stared. At her. The deed. Sterling. How does a 12-year-old know about sultans and seals and iron gall ink? Imani held up the dictionary. My great-grandfather was Sergeant Isaiah Lewis, monuments man in World War II. He saved art and documents. He taught me how to authenticate artifacts. Everything he knew is in this book. She opened it, showed the handwritten notes, careful sketches. He spent 40 years studying forgeries. He taught me the best forgers always make one small mistake. Always. Harrison took the dictionary, stared at the pages, the meticulous notes in faded blue ink. Sterling moved toward the door. Nobody moves, Harrison repeated. Deadly calm. He looked at Sterling. Sit down. All of you. We're going through this document line by line. This is absurd. Sit down. Sterling sat. Sterling's mask cracked, but he tried rebuilding. He leaned forward, speaking rapid Arabic to Imani, low, threatening. Little girl, you're making a dangerous mistake. Your mother needs this job. Accidents happen on the subway. People fall onto tracks. Very tragic. Grace gasped. What did he say? Imani didn't answer. She stared at Sterling, then responded, in Arabic, but colloquial Lebanese dialect. Your accent is very good, Mr. Davis, almost perfect, but you made a mistake. You used kifak for how are you when you're supposedly from Abu Dhabi. In Emirati dialect, it's shlonak. Small difference. But it tells me you're not from the UAE at all. Sterling's eyes widened. She continued in Lebanese Arabic. Yesterday, describing the ministry documents, you said bi tariq for properly. That's Egyptian, not Emirati. In the Emirates, they'd say by shakal sahi. The Lebanese associate stood suddenly. She knows. We need to leave. Now. Sit down. Sterling snapped. English now. Damage done. Imani switched to English, looking at Harrison. They're not from Abu Dhabi. He's Lebanese, Beirut accent. The second one is Egyptian. The third might be Emirati, but I doubt it. She pulled out her phone. Here's proof. She showed Harrison the photographs, the deed, the seal. Side by side with the real UAE ministry seal. Look at the crest, eagle versus falcon. Look at the calligraphy, Ottoman instead of Emirati. Look at the wax. Too bright. Modern polymer, not aged sealing wax. Harrison took her phone, zoomed in. His hands shook. Sterling stood. This is ridiculous. A child with a phone. The date, Imani said. Louder now, stronger. Check the date against when Sultan Ahmad II took power. Check the geographical descriptions against historical maps. Check the terminology against period legal documents. She looked at Harrison. Or just call the UAE Ministry of Interior. Ask them to verify the seal. They'll tell you it's fake in 30 seconds. Catherine spoke from the window. Harrison, call them, right now. Harrison stared at the photos, at the deed, at Sterling. Sterling's face was gray. You were going to steal $250 million from me, Harrison said slowly, using a fake document, in a language you assumed I couldn't verify. Harrison, how many others? The Lebanese associate bolted for the door. Grace screamed. Catherine moved faster, blocked the door. Nobody leaves, she said firmly. Harrison, call security. Call the police. Harrison reached for his phone. Sterling lunged across the desk for the wire transfer form. Imani snatched it first, held it against her chest, protected by her great-grandfather's dictionary, while Sterling's hand stopped inches from her face. Harrison's voice cut through like thunder. Touch her, and I'll have you arrested for assault of a minor on top of fraud. Sterling froze, slowly backed away, eyes fixed on Imani with pure hatred. She stared back, unblinking, 12 years old, surrounded by broken glass. holding a $250 million contract and a dead man's dictionary. For the first time in her life, Imani Lewis was not invisible. Harrison stood at his desk, phone in hand, face pale. "I need to verify something. Catherine, get me Professor Omar Wilson at Georgetown, Arabic Studies." Catherine pulled out her phone. "He's a friend. I'll call." Sterling stood. "Harrison, this is unnecessary." "Sit down." Sterling sat. Catherine spoke into her phone. "Omar? Catherine Taylor, I need a favor. Can you look at a historical document right now?" Pause. "Yes, urgent. Harrison's about to wire $250 million based on it." She listened. "Perfect. I'll set up video." 2 minutes later, the television screen flickered to life. Professor Omar Wilson appeared. Elderly, white hair, kind eyes. Behind him, bookshelves filled with ancient volumes. "Harrison, Catherine, this must be urgent." "Omar," Harrison said, voice strained, "I need you to look at an Arabic deed from 1680. Tell me if it's authentic." "Of course. Show me." Harrison held his phone over the deed. Catherine positioned her laptop so the professor could see high resolution. Zoomed in as he directed. Professor Wilson studied silently. The calligraphy, the seal, the text. Finally, he spoke. "Where did you acquire this? Is it authentic?" The professor sighed. "No, I'm afraid not." Sterling stood. "That's ridiculous." "Be quiet," Harrison said without looking. Professor Wilson continued lecturer's tone. "The calligraphy is beautiful, masterful, but wrong. This is Ottoman-influenced Diwani script, not what would have been used for official Emirati family documents in 1680. He gestured. "Zoom in on the seal." Catherine adjusted. "There, the crest. That's an eagle. The Al-Jamil seal has always featured a falcon. Significant error." He leaned closer. "And the ink. Modern carbon-based. Real iron gall ink from that period would show oxidation, burning into paper, creating halos around letters. This ink just sits on the surface." Imani listened, heart pounding. Everything her great-grandfather taught, this professor confirmed it all. "But the most obvious error is in the text itself. Show me the date section." Catherine moved the camera. "Yes, there. This deed references Sultan Ahmad II. But Ahmad didn't ascend until 1691. This document is dated 1680, 11-year anachronism." He paused, looking at the camera. "Whoever created this was skilled, very skilled. But they made critical mistakes any expert would spot immediately." Harrison's face went gray. "Who spotted it, Omar? Who brought this to your attention?" Harrison turned slowly to Imani. She stood in broken glass, holding her great-grandfather's dictionary. "Her," Harrison said, voice barely audible. "A 12-year-old girl." Professor Wilson's eyebrows rose. "May I speak with her?" Harrison nodded. Imani walked through the glass to stand before the camera. "Hello," she said quietly. "Hello, young lady. What's your name?" "Imani Lewis." "How did you learn to authenticate Arabic historical documents, Imani?" She held up the dictionary. "My great-grandfather, Sergeant Isaiah Lewis, monuments man during World War II. He taught me." Professor Wilson's expression changed. Recognition, respect. "Isaiah Lewis. I know that name. His work on Abbasid-era manuscript authentication is still cited in academic papers." He smiled. "You have an extraordinary legacy, and clearly you've learned his lessons well." Harrison stood very still, staring at Imani like seeing her for the first time. "How long have you been able to read Arabic?" "Since I was 8. You taught yourself?" "Yes. My great-grandfather's dictionary, free MIT courses, YouTube videos, library books." Harrison's voice was hollow. "Yesterday, when we spoke, you understood every word." "Every word," Imani confirmed. Catherine spoke. "Omar, how advanced is her understanding?" Professor Wilson looked thoughtful. "Based on her ability to identify Ottoman versus Emirati calligraphic conventions, distinguish between iron gall and carbon inks, recognize Sultanate chronology errors, and understand colloquial dialectical variations." He paused. "This young woman has graduate-level expertise in Arabic historical linguistics." He leaned forward. "Imani, have you competed in Arabic language competitions? Regional competition last year, 3rd place. Against high school students?" "Yes, sir." "Remarkable." He shook his head. "Harrison, this young woman just saved you from catastrophic financial loss." He looked at Sterling. "And whoever sold it to you knew exactly what they were doing." Harrison turned to Sterling, voice ice. "How many others?" Sterling said nothing. "I'm calling the FBI Financial Crimes Unit, my lawyers, the SEC." Sterling stood. So did his associates. Going somewhere? The door opened. 2 security guards entered. "These 3 men don't leave the building. Police are coming." Sterling's face twisted with rage. He looked at Imani. "You stupid—" "That's enough," Catherine said sharply, stepped between Sterling and Imani. "You'll speak to lawyers and the FBI, not to her." Harrison walked to Imani, looked down at this tiny 12-year-old in broken crystal holding a worn dictionary. "You saved me, my company, my reputation, everything." Imani didn't smile, didn't nod, just looked at him. And Harrison Taylor saw himself reflected in a child's eyes, saw exactly what he was. "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking. "For yesterday, for today. For 12 years I treated you and your mother like you were invisible, like you were less than human." Grace stood in the doorway, tears streaming. Harrison looked at her. "Mrs. Lewis, I've been a blind, arrogant fool. Your daughter just demonstrated more intelligence, courage, and integrity than I've seen in my entire career." He turned to Imani. "Where did you apply for scholarships?" "Carleton Academy. I was rejected." "You're not rejected anymore. I'm calling the headmaster tonight. Full scholarship. The best Arabic tutors money can buy. Study abroad wherever you want." Imani's eyes widened. "And your mother," Harrison turned to Grace, "I'd like to offer you a position. Not as housekeeper, as curator of my art collection. Salary, benefits, pension, starting Monday." Grace's hand covered her mouth. Couldn't speak. Professor Wilson's voice came from the screen. "Imani, may I add something?" She looked at the camera. "Consider Georgetown when you're ready for university. Full scholarship. I'll make sure of it. The Arabic Studies Department would be honored to have Sergeant Isaiah Lewis's great-granddaughter." Sirens wailed outside, getting closer. Harrison looked at the wire transfer form in Imani's hand. "May I have that back?" She handed it to him. He ripped it in half, then in half again, and again. The pieces fell like snow around the broken glass. The NYPD arrived 6 minutes later. 2 detectives from the Financial Crimes Unit. A man and a woman, both in plain clothes, badges on their belts. The lead detective was a woman named Sarah Moore. She looked at the scene. 3 men in expensive suits surrounded by security guards, a billionaire holding pieces of a torn contract, a 12-year-old black girl standing in broken glass. "Someone want to explain what's happening here?" Harrison spoke first. "These men attempted to defraud me of $250 million using a forged historical document. That girl," he pointed to Imani, "she's the one who exposed them." Detective Moore's eyebrows rose. She looked at Imani. "You?" Imani nodded. "How?" "I read Arabic. The document they tried to sell Mr. Taylor is a fake. Wrong seal, wrong ink, wrong dates." Detective Moore pulled out a notepad. "Your name? Imani Lewis. Age? 12. The detective wrote that down, looked at Sterling. "And you are?" "Sterling Davis. This is absurd. The child is making accusations based on expert analysis." Professor Wilson's voice came from the screen. He was still on the video call. "I'm Professor Omar Wilson, Georgetown University Arabic Studies. I've just verified that the document in question is indeed a sophisticated forgery. The young lady's assessment is entirely correct." Detective Moore looked at the screen, then at Sterling. "Mr. Davis, I'm going to need you to come with us for questioning." Sterling's face went dark red. "On what grounds?" "Attempted wire fraud. If what I'm hearing is true, we're talking about $250 million. The second detective stepped forward. "Mr. Taylor, we'll need to see the document. And any communications you've had with these men." "Of course." Harrison handed over his phone. "Everything is there. Emails, text messages, the forged deed." Detective Moore turned to Imani. "And you. I'm going to need a full statement. Can your mother be present?" "I'm right here," Grace said from the doorway. "Good. We'll need to hear exactly what you overheard and how you identified the forgery." Catherine spoke up. "Detective, Professor Wilson can provide expert testimony as well, and we have video of his analysis." "Excellent." Detective Moore looked at Sterling and his associates. "Gentlemen, you're coming with us. We have some questions." Sterling didn't move. "I want my lawyer. You can call from the station." As the detectives led Sterling and his associates out, news crews were already gathering in the lobby downstairs. Someone had tipped them off, probably building security. By the time the elevator reached the ground floor, cameras were flashing. "Mr. Davis! Is it true you attempted to defraud Harrison Taylor? Did a child really expose your scam? How many other victims are there? Sterling said nothing, head down, being led to a police car. Upstairs, Harrison stood at his window watching the scene below. They're going to want to talk to you too, Detective Moore told Imani. Not tonight, but soon. This is going to be a big case. She looked at Imani with something like respect. You did good, kid. Really good. After the police left, the apartment fell quiet. Harrison, Catherine, Grace, Imani, and Professor Wilson still on the screen. This is going to be national news, Catherine said softly. Maybe international. Harrison nodded. Imani, the media is going to want to talk to you. You don't have to if you don't want to. Imani looked at her mother. Grace squeezed her hand. It's your choice, baby. Imani thought for a moment, then nodded. I'll talk to them, if it helps catch other people doing this. Professor Wilson smiled from the screen. Spoken like a true scholar. Truth above comfort. After Professor Wilson disconnected, the apartment felt suddenly too quiet. Harrison stood in the middle of his study, surrounded by broken glass, by the evidence of his own arrogance. I need to say something, he started. His voice was rough. To both of you. Grace and Imani stood together, waiting. I grew up poor, Harrison said. Detroit. My father worked in a factory. My mother cleaned houses, just like you. He looked at Grace. I clawed my way out. Scholarships, student loans, 100-hour work weeks. I built this company from nothing. He paused. And somewhere along the way, I forgot where I came from. I forgot what it felt like to be invisible, to be dismissed because of where you lived or how much money you had. His voice cracked. I became the thing I hated, the kind of man who looks down on people doing honest work, who treats intelligence like it's something you can buy. He looked at Imani. You're 12 years old. You taught yourself a language most adults can't master. You authenticated a historical document that fooled my lawyers. You exposed an international fraud ring. He shook his head. And yesterday, I called you an animal. The word hung in the air like poison. I can't take that back, Harrison said. I can't erase 12 years of treating your mother like she didn't exist. Can't erase yesterday or today. He took a deep breath. But I can do better going forward, starting now. He turned to Grace. The curator position is real, not charity. I have 200 artifacts in this apartment alone. Most haven't been properly cataloged in years. I need someone I can trust, someone with integrity. He looked at her directly. $60,000 a year to start. Full benefits, pension. Your daughter can visit the collection anytime. Use it for her studies. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Taylor, Harrison, he said, please. Just Harrison. He turned to Imani. And you. Carleton Academy is just the beginning. Whatever you need, tutors, books, travel, university, all of it. No strings attached. He paused. I'm not trying to buy forgiveness. I don't deserve that. I'm trying to invest in someone who's already proven she's extraordinary. Catherine walked over and put her hand on Harrison's shoulder. We both are. Imani, you'll always have a place here, not as staff, as family. Grace couldn't hold back anymore. She started crying, really crying. Imani hugged her mother tight. Harrison stood there watching them. This woman who'd cleaned his home for 12 years. This child who'd saved his entire company. And he finally understood what he'd been too blind to see before. Value isn't about money or position or power. It's about character, courage, truth. And the greatest treasures are often the ones you almost throw away. 9 months later. Imani Lewis stood at the front of her 8th grade classroom at Carleton Academy. The private school she'd been rejected from a year ago. Now she was their star student. She wore the Navy uniform proudly. On her desk sat her great-grandfather's dictionary. The teachers let her keep it there. They understood what it meant. After school, she took the subway to Harrison's office. Not to clean, to work. She'd helped catalog 143 artifacts in his collection so far. Found 2 more forgeries. Both times Harrison had called the original sellers and demanded refunds. Her mother met her there. Grace had an office now, with her name on the door. Grace Lewis, chief curator. She managed a team of 5 people. All of them called her Miss Lewis with genuine respect. Harrison had changed too, not completely. He was still demanding, still driven, but different. He'd implemented something he called the Hidden Talent Initiative. Every employee in his company, from executives to maintenance staff, filled out a skills inventory. What languages do you speak? What degrees do you have? What can you do that we don't know about? The results shocked him. His head of security had a PhD in mathematics. His night janitor was a former civil engineer from Syria. His receptionist spoke 5 languages fluently. Harrison promoted 11 people in the first month, created new positions for 6 others, started paying for continuing education for anyone who wanted it. The business press called it revolutionary. Harrison called it embarrassingly overdue. He'd been interviewed on CNN, Bloomberg, NPR. Every time he told Imani's story, gave her credit, used his platform to talk about wasted potential and invisible genius. "We're walking past brilliance every single day," he'd said on 60 Minutes. "We just don't bother to look." The segment had gone viral, 12 million views. Imani's story became a case study at Harvard Business School, a TED Talk, a documentary in production. But for Imani, the best part was simpler. She wasn't invisible anymore. Neither was her mother. Imani graduated from Carleton Academy 4 years later. Valedictorian. Full scholarship to Georgetown waiting. Professor Wilson walked her through campus on her first visit. Showed her the Arabic Studies building, the library, the classrooms where she'd spend the next 4 years. "Your great-grandfather would be proud," he told her. "I hope so," she said. She kept his dictionary with her always, added her own notes in the margins now, in English and Arabic, continuing his work. On the first page, she'd written something new. Words for anyone who might read it someday. Genius doesn't announce itself. It waits quietly in corners, cleaning floors, riding buses, hoping someone will finally look. The question isn't whether brilliant people exist around you. They do. The question is, are you paying attention? Who are you walking past every single day? Who have you dismissed because of their job, their clothes, their age, their accent? Who could change your life or save it if you just stopped and listened? The dictionary sat open on her dorm room desk, waiting for the next person who needed to learn its lessons, waiting to be heard.
You just witnessed the gap between power and responsibility. At Beat Stories, we close that gap, one story at a time. Subscribe and help hold systems, leaders, and gatekeepers accountable.